Hi everyone, thanks for watching my video on how to make a baked New York cheesecake. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to basically blitz our biscuits to a fine crumb, and I add a couple of teaspoons of cinnamon as well. If you don't like cinnamon, then just don't add it. You can also use ginger biscuits. I'm using digestives, and you could give it an extra zing if you're using ginger biscuits by putting a couple of teaspoons of ginger powder in. Now, if you haven't got a food processor, just pop the biscuits in a bag and then crush them with a rolling pin. Next thing I'm going to do, once they're down to a fine crumb, is add the melted butter, give it a good shake, and then we can get it into our prepared tin. Now, the tin I'm using is just a bog standard springform cake tin. I've sprayed it with a little bit of oil, and I've placed a piece of non-stick baking parchment down at the bottom, which is really important. It'll help you get the slices out later. So you can see I've put my biscuit crumbs in, and all I'm doing now is just pushing them down by hand, and you can do that a few days in advance and keep it in the fridge. This, because it's a baked cheesecake, we need to bake it in a pan of water, so we need to make the tin waterproof. So I've laid down about 5 or 6 sheets of cling film on top of each other, and I'm just wrapping it around the tin there. And also, for a bit of extra insurance, I'm using some strong kitchen foil just to give us another layer of protection. What we don't want is water leaking into the tin while it bakes. The foil will come in handy later as well, as you'll see. So the next thing we're going to do is beat together our cream cheese, our icing sugar, and lemon zest and vanilla paste. Now, these are the traditional flavours for a New York cheesecake. You don't need to use posh cream cheese. I just use cheap own brand, but you've got to make sure that it's full fat. So it's also really important that you beat this mixture. Don't whisk it. So again, if you don't have a machine with a beating attachment like I'm using there, just use a spatula and beat it together by hand. Once it's nice and smooth, the next thing we can do is add our binding agent, which are of course eggs. So you can just throw them all in at once, and then all I'm going to do is beat it together until that's nice and smooth. So you can see this is a really simple recipe that literally takes minutes to make. So you can see there, I'm just giving it a quick scrape down, and then finally we want a small tub of fresh double cream, and that's really important that it's fresh, pure double cream. If all your ingredients are at room temperature as well, that would help. So I tend to pull them out a couple of hours before I need them. So you can see there, I've put the cream in, and I just gave it another quick beat. Now here, we do want to whisk it ever so briefly until it's just about leaving a ribbon trail when you pull the whisk out. So we don't want to get too much air into it, but you can see it's just holding a very light ribbon. This will give us just an ever so slight, very light, airy texture. And then the final thing that we're going to add, again, purely optional, but the New York cheesecakes that I used to eat as a child had sultanas in. So we've got our sultanas there. I've just literally tossed them in some plain flour, and it just stops them from sinking. But because we've got a bit of air and a bit of thickness in the mixture, they won't sink anyway. Now, there's my oven ready and warmed up. It's set at 170°. So you can see that I've put the cheesecake into, I just use my grill pan because it fits perfectly in the oven, and I filled it as much as I can with boiling water. So the oven has been preheating at 170°C for about an hour. Now I know that this cheesecake in my oven takes between an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to bake. So what I'm going to do first is, and you'll see this in my other videos, I always set it for less than I actually want it to, and what it does is it reminds me to go and have a look at it and check that it's not colouring too quickly. You'll also see that I've positioned the pan so the cheesecake itself is in the centre of the oven. So after about 45 minutes, we're just going to see what the wobble's like, and we are looking for a wobble here. Now after 45 minutes, I can guarantee you it's not ready, but it is starting to get a little bit of colour on the top. So I've used the foil that's around the side almost to give me some little legs, so I can rest a piece of foil on top to stop it touching the top of the cheesecake. You'll also see the cheesecake is slightly souffled as well. Now, one thing that I'm really keen on is checking temperatures if things are ready. Now, I wouldn't normally do this with a cheesecake because a baked cheesecake can be quite fragile and it will crack. Now, as part of the ingredients, when we beat together the cream cheese with the sugar, we also add some corn flour. Now, the corn flour will stop it hopefully from cracking, and I'll show you a way to guarantee that later. But just so as I can show you in this video what sort of the optimum sort of wobble that we're looking for, we're actually looking for a certain temperature. So if you've got a temperature probe and you're feeling brave, feel free to pop it in, but bear in mind you could initiate a crack. So eggs set at just over 70°C. So if it's somewhere between 72 and 75°C when you test it, then I can guarantee you that cheesecake is set to perfection. Now, to stop it cracking, turn your oven off and then leave your door ajar. And I'm just going to use one of my oven gloves here just to literally leave the door ever so slightly open and leave it in there until it has cooled completely. This will mean the cheesecake cools slowly, it'll sink back down into the tin, it'll shrink away slightly, and you will see that it hasn't cracked, even though I did prod it. We've got just an ever so slight toasted look on top, which is right, and the inside will be beautifully creamy. So now I'm going to get rid of the foil, I'm going to get rid of the cling film, and just make sure that it is completely cold before popping it in an airtight container in the fridge. You can make this well in advance, at least a day or two in advance. It will last about a week, and then just keep it in the fridge until you need it. Really important bit here, when you bring it out to serve, don't try and get the cheesecake off the base of the tin. You will end up with a disaster. So serve it on the base of the tin, but because we put the non-stick baking parchment down there, once you slice it, the slices will come out absolutely very cleanly and beautifully. And you can see here the cheesecake looks really creamy inside. It's got an ever so slightly airy texture because we whipped it for about a minute or so, and the sultanas haven't sunk. They are evenly distributed throughout it, and you also get the beautiful speckles from the vanilla paste. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and please feel free to check out my others, and also feel free to give me a subscribe as well. Thanks a lot and enjoy.